Now, Ruhollah Khomeini was born in 1900 in a small town known as Khomeini. His father was murdered when he was 2 years old, and he grew up studying the Quran, eventually becoming a high-ranking Shia cleric, an Ayatollah, and a respected scholar of Islamic philosophy and mysticism. For decades, Khomeini was primarily known as a teacher and as a writer, but in 1963, everything changed. When the Shah announced the White Revolution, Khomeini emerged as its fiercest critic. He denounced the land reforms as a plot to destroy the influence of the clergy. He attacked the entire reform package in general, including the enfranchisement of women as contrary to Islamic law and going against the Quran, and a capitulation to America. He accused the Shah of being a puppet of the United States and of Israel. And on June 3rd, 1963, the holy day of Ashura, commemorating the martyrdom of Imam Hussein at Karbala, Khomeini delivered a blistering sermon comparing the Shah to Yazid, the hated tyrant who actually killed Hussein. And to Shia Muslims, this was the most damning possible accusation, literally calling him Yazid, the terrible tyrant who killed one of the most important people in Shia Islam. 2 days later, Savak agents arrested Khomeini, and protests erupted across Iran. The government responded with force. Estimates of the dead range anywhere from a few dozen into the hundreds, and the Shah basically faced a choice. He can either execute Khomeini and risk making him a martyr, which then can cause a bigger political issue, or exile him and hope that he would just fade into obscurity. And so the Shah chose exile. In 1964, Khomeini was sent first to Turkey and then to Najaf in Iraq, one of Shia Islam's holiest cities. And there, for basically the next 14 years, he would develop the political philosophy that would ultimately reshape Iran. His central idea was velayet-e faqih, the guardianship of the Islamic jurist. Khomeini argued that the absence of the hidden imam, basically a messianic figure in Shia Islam, without this, governance should fall to qualified religious scholars, a system in which a supreme Islamic jurist has ultimate authority over elected institutions and everything within the country. This was revolutionary even within Shia Islam at the time. Many senior clerics disagreed with Khomeini's interpretation, but in the charged atmosphere of the 1970s, his uncompromising opposition to the Shah made him an icon, a rallying point for everyone who hated the current regime. From Iraq, Khomeini's sermons were recorded on cassette tapes and smuggled into Iran by the thousands. In mosques and bazaars, in private homes, university dorms, Iranians listened to the Ayatollah denounce the Shah as a tyrant and as a puppet and as an enemy of Islam. The Shah could silence his critics in Iran, but he could not silence the voice coming from Najaf. Now, by the late 1970s, the Shah's position was weakened on multiple fronts. Economically, the oil boom of the early 1970s had created rampant inflation. Housing costs were going up, and the gap between the rich and the poor became more visible. Politically, the Shah had banned all political parties, except, of course, his own party, the Rastakhiz party, eliminating any legitimate outlet for any dissent at all. Internationally, a new American president, this guy Jimmy Carter, was emphasizing human rights. The Shah, under pressure, relaxed some restrictions on political expression. He may have hoped that maybe this would satisfy the critics or, give them an outlet, but instead, it just emboldened them. And in October of 1977, Khomeini's son, Mustafa, died suddenly in Iraq. His supporters blamed Savak. This, again, is that secret police that Pahlavi has. A memorial service in Tehran turned into a political demonstration, and then protests started. On January 7, 1978, a government newspaper published an article attacking Khomeini as a British agent and as a reactionary. Theological students in the holy city of Qom protested, and police opened fire on them, and several students were killed. In Shia tradition, mourning ceremonies are held 40 days after a death has occurred. The calm mourning turned into brand new protests, and those protests produced even more deaths, and then 40 days later, more mourning, more protests, and more death. This cycle of violence that was building throughout the 1978, and each round of mourning produced new martyrs, and each new martyr produced new outrage. And the Shah was starting to lose options. He tried concessions, he replaced hardline officials with reformers, he promised free elections, he acknowledged the past mistakes, but at this point, none of it worked. And as a matter of fact, the opposition actually started to smell the weakness. And on August 19th, 1978, an event occurred that would prove decisive, though its true nature would be disputed for decades. In the city of Abadan, a Cinema Rex movie theater was packed with a bunch of people going to see a movie called The Deer. And at 8:21 p.m., 4 men barred the exits, doused the building with jet fuel, and set it ablaze. Between 377 and 470 people burned to death, and it remains one of the deadliest peacetime arson attacks on civilians in history in any country. The government blamed Islamic militants, and of course, the opposition blamed the secret police, Savak. Subsequent research and court testimony point strongly to Islamic militants, including Hossein Taksbalazadeh and 3 accomplices as the arsonists, though the episode remains contested in public memory. But that's not what many Iranians believed in 1978. The opposite version, that Savak had murdered hundreds of innocent people to discredit the revolution, spread instantly. Khomeini supporters declared that thousands have been massacred by Zionist troops. In this atmosphere of mistrust and anger, the truth doesn't matter. What matters was ultimately what people felt or what they believed. And they believed that the Shah had killed their families. This Cinema Rex fire radicalized millions of Iranians who had previously just stayed neutral. As one historian put it, suddenly for hundreds of thousands, the movement was their own business. 3 weeks later came the point of no return. On September 7th, 1978, the Shah declared martial law in Tehran and 11 other cities. The announcement came late at night, and many Iranians didn't hear it. The next morning, Friday, September 8th, thousands of protesters gathered in Jaleh Square in Tehran, unaware that demonstrations were now illegal. So when soldiers ordered them to disperse, they refused, and then the army opened fire. Official government figures claimed that 86 people died. Opposition leaders claimed that thousands died. The most reliable estimates, based on later research, suggest that around 64 protesters and 30 security personnel were killed in Jaleh Square that day, with additional deaths elsewhere in Tehran. The opposition, however, broadcast far higher numbers. Of course, rumors spread that Israeli soldiers had been brought in to massacre Iranians, and this was largely discredited and thought to be a fabrication, but was widely believed by the people at the time. Black Friday, as it would be called, created what historian Ervand Abrahamian described as a sea of blood between the Shah and the people. Any possibility of compromise with the Shah and with the public just completely died in Jaleh Square that day. And from that point forward, the protests would only grow. The Iranian Revolution was not initially an Islamic revolution. It was a coalition. Khomeini's followers, organized through mosques primarily, funded by, merchants at bazaars and mobilized by religious networks, formed the largest, most disciplined faction. But they were not alone. The National Front, a political movement of the martyred Mossadegh, brought liberals and nationalists who wanted democracy and a constitutional government. The Tudeh Party, the leftist party, basically, and other leftist groups brought communists and socialists who wanted economic transformation and an end to Western influence. The People's Mojahedin, a radical organization blending Islam and Marxism, brought young militants willing to fight. University students brought numbers and energy. Bazaar merchants brought money and organizational infrastructure.